Have you ever had a moment so strange, so perfectly timed, that it stopped you in your tracks? You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and seconds later, your phone lights up with their name. You're walking through the noise of the city, burdened with thoughts, when suddenly you see a word written on a wall, a word that feels as though it was painted there just for you, at that exact moment in your life. Or maybe you're sitting in your car, lost in confusion about your future, when the radio plays a song that seems to echo your hidden feelings, speaking the words you couldn't say yourself. Most of us have lived through moments like these. And yet, almost every time, we dismiss them. We tell ourselves, it's just chance, just coincidence. Our rational mind works overtime to explain them away, with statistics, with probability, with logic. Because to admit that something greater might be at work, something that defies control, something that resists reason, is deeply uncomfortable. But what if these moments were not random? What if these strange coincidences were life itself, trying to reach you? Not through loud commands or obvious signs, but through subtle whispers, through symbols, dreams, and encounters that carry a meaning beyond explanation. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most daring thinkers of the 20th century, refused to look away from these experiences. While others laughed them off, Jung studied them, recorded them, and gave them a name that still unsettles modern science: synchronicity. For Jung, these coincidences were not accidents. They were a dialogue between the world outside you and the world within you, a kind of secret conversation between reality and the soul. The closer you move toward your true self, Jung noticed, the more these moments appear, as if the universe itself bends to guide you forward, waiting only for you to learn how to listen. Let me ask you this. When life calls, not in words, but in symbols and synchronicities, will you answer? What exactly is synchronicity? To understand it, we have to begin with the way we normally see the world. From childhood, we are taught that reality works like a machine. One thing causes another. Every effect has a measurable, predictable cause. Drop an object, and gravity pulls it down. Flip a switch, and the light turns on. The logic of cause and effect is the foundation of science, of reason, of everything we consider rational. But then, there are moments that don't fit this pattern. You dream of a place you've never been, and the next day you find yourself standing there. You think of an old friend for no reason, and within hours you cross paths with them. You carry a private question in your heart, and then a stranger speaks the very words you needed to hear. These events have no clear chain of causality. There is no logical reason why they should happen. And yet, when they do, they feel charged with significance. They leave us shaken, sometimes even trembling, as though the universe itself had leaned closer to whisper something only we could understand. Carl Jung recognized these moments for what they were: meaningful coincidences. He saw them again and again in his patients, and even in his own life. He called them synchronicities, events in which the outer world and the inner world line up in ways too strange, too precise, too alive with meaning to dismiss as random. Point one of his most famous stories comes from a patient who was deeply rational, even rigid. She told Jung about a dream of a golden scarab, a powerful symbol of rebirth in Egyptian mythology. As she spoke, a tapping sound came from the window. Jung opened it and caught a beetle, astonishingly, a scarab-like insect, rare for that region and season. He handed it to her and said, "Here is your scarab." At that moment, her defenses crumbled. For weeks, she had resisted therapy, holding tight to logic. But this coincidence pierced her armor. It was as if life itself had entered the room, demanding to be seen. This, Jung realized, was not an accident. It was not magic. It was synchronicity, a bridge between the psyche and the world, a sign that meaning itself may be woven into the fabric of reality. And here is the most unsettling part. Synchronicities don't just happen randomly. Jung observed that they often appear at turning points in our lives, during crises, transitions, moments when something inside us is struggling to awaken. The more we move toward our true path, the more frequent and undeniable these events become. So ask yourself, are these just coincidences? Or are they messages? Are they accidents of probability? Or are they signals from a deeper intelligence? One that uses symbols instead of words and whispers instead of shouts. Jung believed it was the latter. And if he was right, then life is far stranger and far more meaningful than most of us dare to imagine. If synchronicities are real, if life is speaking to us through these strange, meaningful coincidences, then why do so many of us ignore them? Why do we dismiss them as accidents, brush them aside, and return to our rational explanations? The answer lies in how we've been conditioned to see the world. From our earliest years, we are trained to value logic above all else. School teaches us to memorize formulas, to solve problems with reason, to trust only what can be measured and repeated. We are rewarded for being analytical, practical, efficient, but we are never taught how to listen. We are never shown how to read the world symbolically, how to treat dreams, intuitions, or sudden impulses as meaningful. Instead, we inherit a suspicion toward anything that cannot be quantified. A child who sees patterns in numbers or hears significance in a dream is told to stop imagining things. An adult who follows a hunch instead of a plan is called irrational. Slowly, we learn to silence that inner radar, the very radar that Jung believed was essential to a full human life. That we live in a culture that distrusts mystery. Everything must be explained, analyzed, controlled. But synchronicity does not live in that world. It cannot be pinned down in a laboratory. It cannot be forced to repeat itself on command. It is rare, fleeting, symbolic, and because of that, our rational mind dismisses it. We tell ourselves it was just luck, just probability, just the brain looking for patterns. And so we turn away, pretending the whisper never happened. But this dismissal comes at a cost. Without realizing it, we cut ourselves off from a profound source of meaning. We begin to walk through life as if blindfolded, deaf to the subtle signals that reality sends our way. It's as if the universe is writing us love letters every day, but we refuse to open the envelopes. And so we push forward, relying only on control. We analyze, we plan, we calculate. But despite all this effort, many of us feel restless, anxious, disconnected. Deep down, we sense that something essential is missing, that something is not knowledge, it is sensitivity. Sensitivity to the symbols, the dreams, the coincidences that connect us back to the living fabric of reality. Jung believed that by ignoring these signs, we live in what he called a truncated way. Half alive, rational, yes, productive, yes, but disconnected from the soul. And when the soul is silenced, life feels flat, mechanical, even meaningless. The next time you notice a coincidence, one of those moments that makes your spine tingle or your heart pause, ask yourself, will you explain it away the way you've been trained to? Or will you dare to listen, to entertain the possibility that life itself is trying to speak? Because the truth is this: the signs have never stopped appearing. It is we who have stopped listening. So when do these mysterious coincidences appear? If they are not constant, if they are not merely random, then what conditions summon them into our lives? Carl Jung observed something fascinating. Synchronicities tend to multiply during times of transition, when life is shifting beneath your feet, when something inside you is pressing for change, even if you don't yet know where that change will lead. Think about those moments. You feel restless, uneasy, as if the familiar world no longer fits. The job that once felt secure suddenly feels suffocating. The relationship that gave you comfort now feels fragile, uncertain. The routines that once gave stability now feel like a cage. You cannot yet see the path forward, but you know, deep down, that the old way is ending. It is in these moments. Moments of rupture, of crisis, of awakening, that synchronicities arrive with astonishing force. Like lanterns flickering on a dark road, they don't reveal the entire destination, but they illuminate enough to show that you are not walking alone. Jung noticed this pattern in countless patients. Someone facing a breakup might suddenly encounter symbols of transformation everywhere: butterflies, phoenixes, stories of renewal. A person at the edge of a career change might meet strangers who mention opportunities they had never considered. Someone grieving a loss might begin to see repeating numbers, phrases, or dreams that speak directly to their pain. These were not random to Jung. They were messages, fragments of meaning rising from the unconscious, mirrored by the outer world, guiding the individual toward growth. And the signs themselves are rarely obvious. They do not announce themselves with thunder. Instead, they come quietly, disguised as the ordinary. A book that falls open to the exact page you needed to read. An animal that keeps appearing in your daily path. A word or phrase spoken by a stranger that mirrors your private thoughts. At first, they seem like nothing. But when you pause, when you feel that strange resonance in your chest, you realize this is not just chance. Jung compared synchronicities to symbols in dreams. Just as a dream speaks in metaphor, so too does reality. At critical moments, shift into a symbolic language. It speaks not to the logical mind, but to the soul. The more you pay attention, the clearer this language becomes. And the more intense your inner crisis, the stronger the outer signs. When something in your life is about to transform, reality itself seems to bend, arranging coincidences that push you toward awakening. So perhaps the question is not, do synchronicities happen? They do. The real question is, will you notice them? Will you recognize the lanterns on your path? Or will you walk past them, blind to the fact that life itself is trying to guide you? Because if Jung was right, then these signs are not interruptions in your journey. They are invitations to take the next step. If synchronicity were nothing more than curious coincidences, it might still be fascinating, but Carl Jung believed it was something far greater. For him, synchronicity revealed a deeper truth, that the universe is not built only on matter and mechanics, but also on meaning. This was a radical thought, one that still unsettles modern science. For centuries, the dominant worldview has been that reality is a giant machine, governed by physical laws, predictable and controllable. But synchronicities do not fit into this model. They cannot be replicated in a laboratory. They are not predictable in the way falling objects or chemical reactions are. Instead, they are unique, symbolic, deeply personal. Jung. This was not weakness, it was power. Synchronicities showed that the psyche and the external world are not separate, but woven together. They revealed a hidden order where inner and outer events can align, not through causality, but through meaning. His conversations with the physicist Wolfgang Pauli, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, reinforced this conviction. Together, they speculated that perhaps reality itself is structured by two principles: causality and meaning. The physical world moves according to cause and effect, but beneath it runs a parallel dimension, one in which meaning shapes the flow of events, drawing together the inner life of the psyche and the outer fabric of the world. Think about what this implies. It means that when you encounter a synchronicity, you are not simply imagining connections. You are glimpsing a deeper order, one in which your private inner world is mirrored by the universe itself. You are not a passive observer, watching life unfold from the outside. You are a participant in a vast, interconnected field where the line between inner and outer dissolves. This is why synchronicities feel so powerful. They are not mere accidents. They are experiences of alignment. They are the universe revealing, for a fleeting instant, that it is not indifferent to you, that your journey has meaning, and that meaning is written not only in your heart, but also in the very events of the world. And this is also why they can be so unsettling. They challenge the safety of our rational worldview. They remind us that not everything can be explained, predicted, or controlled. They suggest that reality is more mysterious, more symbolic, more alive than we have been taught to believe. For Jung, synchronicity was a direct encounter with mystery, not superstition, not blind belief, but a lived experience of a hidden intelligence woven through existence. He wanted us not to worship these coincidences, but to notice them, to respect them, to let them reawaken our sensitivity to the symbolic dimension of life. Because to witness a synchronicity is to glimpse something profound, that you are part of a greater story, one that speaks not just in logic, but in symbols, images, and impossible coincidences. And if that is true, then reality is not a machine at all. It is a dialogue. Philosophy and theory can stir the mind, but what truly moves us are stories, moments when ideas step out of books and into real life. And Jung knew this well. For him, synchronicity was not an abstract theory. It was a lived experience that transformed the lives of his patients, and often his own point. One of the most famous stories is the scarab beetle, and it is worth revisiting, not for its strangeness alone, but for the impact it had. A woman came to Jung, brilliant but skeptical, her mind locked in the fortress of reason. She described a dream about a golden scarab, a symbol of transformation and rebirth in Egyptian mythology. As she spoke, Jung heard a tapping at the window. He opened it, and, against all odds, a beetle with golden reflections, the closest thing in that region to a scarab, flew into the room. Jung handed it to her, saying, "Here is your scarab." That moment shattered her defenses. What weeks of analysis could not accomplish, a single synchronicity achieved. It pierced her rational armor and opened her to change. This is what synchronicity does. It does not just surprise us. It transforms us. But you do not need to be in Jung's consulting room to experience this. These stories are everywhere, often in the lives of ordinary people who are willing to pay attention. Imagine a man at the edge of despair, feeling directionless. He wanders into a bookstore without intention. A book falls from the shelf, and when he opens it, the words on the page describe exactly what he is feeling, and, more importantly, what he must do next. The book itself is not magical. What matters is the alignment between his inner readiness and the world's response. Or consider the person who feels uneasy about a major decision. Day after day, they see the same number, the same symbol, the same phrase repeated in different places. At first, it feels odd, but eventually, it becomes undeniable. The universe seems to be nudging, whispering, "Pay attention." These stories may sound small, but their impact is immense. A coincidence that feels trivial to one person may strike another like lightning, shifting their perspective, reorienting their life. Because synchronicities are not measured by their scale, but by their meaning, Jung believed that when we honor these experiences, when we treat them as more than accidents, something powerful happens. The psyche reorganizes itself. The fragments of chaos begin to form a pattern. Life feels less random, less hostile, less empty. Coincidences stop being curiosities and become guides. This is why synchronicities are never trivial. They are invitations, and the people who answer them often describe their lives as changed forever, not because every problem vanishes, but because they begin to see that even struggle, even loss, is woven into a larger story. Pause for a moment. Think of your own life. Have you ever had a coincidence so uncanny, so precise, that it felt as though the universe itself had intervened? If so, you already know these are not accidents. They are calls, and the question is whether you will answer. But what happens when we refuse to listen? What happens when we treat every synchronicity as nothing more than chance? When we explain away the whispers of life until we can no longer hear them at all? The truth is harsh. A life without listening is a life half-lived. It is a life that moves, yes, but without depth. We wake up, go to work, follow routines, pursue goals, and yet something essential is missing. On the surface, everything looks fine, but beneath it, there is an emptiness, a quiet hunger we cannot name. Modern people are experts at this. We plan every detail, analyze every choice, and calculate every risk. We believe that if we control enough variables, if we think carefully enough, life will reward us with stability and certainty. And yet, more often than not, what we find is anxiety. Despite all the planning, life refuses to stay predictable. Despite all the effort, we still feel restless, as though we are drifting through a world that does not quite make sense. Jung saw this everywhere. He believed that by silencing our sensitivity to synchronicity, we blind ourselves to life's symbolic dimension. We cut ourselves off from the dialogue between the inner and the outer world. Imagine receiving letter after letter, each one carrying a message meant only for you, and never opening them. That is how most people live. The signs are always there, but they are left unread, and so life becomes flat. Every event is reduced to statistics, to logic, to probability. We forget that an encounter can be a message, that a dream can be a guide, that a coincidence can be a turning point. Instead, we insist that everything is random, everything is meaningless. And when we live this way, we should not be surprised that the world feels empty. This is the tragedy of ignoring synchronicity. Not that the signs stop appearing, but that we stop seeing them. The universe may whisper, but if we have trained ourselves to hear only noise, then even the most profound call will pass us by. Think of how many times you have felt a subtle warning, a quiet intuition telling you not to take a certain path, but you ignored it because it wasn't logical, and later you regretted it. Or recall a time when you felt pulled towards something, a sudden urge to explore, to call someone, to change direction, but you silenced it because it didn't fit the plan. How many chances for transformation slip away this way? When we live without listening, life becomes a battlefield of control, a constant struggle to force meaning onto events that could have offered meaning freely. We lose the sense that reality is alive, that it speaks, that it participates in our journey. And so we wander, confused, disconnected, not because life is silent, but because we have forgotten how to hear. So what happens when we finally begin to listen? When we stop dismissing the whispers of life as chance and instead treat them as invitations, the first change is subtle but profound. The world begins to feel alive again. No longer a cold machine, grinding forward without meaning, but a field of symbols, patterns, and signs. You start to notice small details you once ignored. A dream that seemed random now carries a message. A phrase spoken by a stranger resonates deeply. A sudden impulse to turn left instead of right leads you to an encounter you could not have planned. The more you listen, the more you see that life has been speaking all along. But listening requires a different kind of attention. Synchronicity does not shout, it whispers. And whispers can only be heard in silence. This is why Jung encouraged practices of reflection, journaling, observing dreams, moments of solitude. In a noisy, hurried life, synchronicities pass by unnoticed. But when you slow down, when you create space for silence, you begin to hear the faint music playing beneath the surface of events. Listening also requires trust. And this is perhaps the hardest part. We are conditioned to trust only what can be measured, tested, proven. To trust a coincidence feels reckless. To act on intuition feels irrational. But Jung believed that this trust was essential for individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Because meaning cannot always be proven, it must be lived. Consider how a musician listens to an instrument. They don't simply analyze the notes, they feel the resonance. In the same way, learning to live with synchronicity means attuning yourself to resonance, to the feeling that something aligns, that a symbol is speaking, that a coincidence carries weight. It is not about blind belief, but about sensitivity. And what happens when you begin to trust? Life starts to respond. The coincidences become clearer, sharper, more undeniable. You feel guided, not in the sense that every step is predetermined, but in the sense that you are not walking alone. Obstacles shift. Opportunities arise. People appear at the exact moment they are needed. The world begins to feel less like resistance and more like dialogue. Most importantly, meaning returns. Even suffering changes shape. A loss is no longer just pain. It is also transition. A failure is no longer just defeat. It is redirection. When you live in dialogue with life, everything gains symbolic depth. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is merely random. This is the shift from a life of control, calculation, and emptiness to a life of listening, trust, and alignment. And it begins the moment you stop dismissing coincidences and start treating them as calls. It is one thing to notice a synchronicity, it is another to respond. Because if you stop at noticing, nothing truly changes. It's like receiving a letter with life-changing news, admiring the envelope, and then setting it aside unopened. Awareness without action becomes just another form of hesitation. Jung understood this clearly. He said that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, demands courage. And part of that courage is responding to what cannot be explained. To see the scarab at the window is powerful, but to let it move you, to act on the meaning it carries, that is transformation. Responding to synchronicity often means stepping into the unknown. Sometimes it means ending a relationship that has already ended in the soul. Sometimes it means leaving a career that drains you, even when logic insists you stay. Sometimes it means calling the person who has been on your mind, taking the risk of saying yes, or the even greater risk of saying no. And here lies the challenge. Action is frightening. The rational mind resists. It wants guarantees, safety, certainty. But synchronicity offers none of these. It offers only a sign, a symbol, a nudge, and then waits to see whether you have the courage to follow. This is why so many people miss their moment. They see the signs, they feel the resonance, but they do not act. They wait for more evidence, more proof, more logic. And in waiting, the moment passes. The window closes. Life moves on. But those who do respond often describe their lives as opening in extraordinary ways. Not because everything becomes easy, but because everything becomes aligned. They step onto paths that seem to unfold ahead of them. They meet the right people at the right time. Obstacles that once felt immovable begin to shift. And even when hardships come, those hardships feel purposeful, like chapters in a larger story. Responding to the call is not about surrendering control to fate. It is about collaboration, working with life instead of against it. It is about treating synchronicity not as superstition, but as dialogue. Life speaks, and you answer, and this dialogue transforms everything. The world no longer feels indifferent. The smallest details shimmer with possibility. Choices carry weight not just in logic, but in meaning. You begin to live as though every encounter, every word, every symbol might be part of a larger conversation between your soul and the universe. But here is the question you must face. When the next synchronicity comes, when the coincidence is too precise, too charged with significance to ignore, will you dismiss it or will you act? Will you step into the unknown, trusting that meaning is guiding you? Because the truth is, the signs are calling. The only question is whether you will answer. There is, however, a danger. Because if every coincidence is treated as a message, if every symbol is given cosmic weight, then we fall not into wisdom, but into superstition. And Jung warned against this as much as he celebrated synchronicity. The human mind is a pattern-seeking machine. It cannot help but look for connections, even when none exist. We see faces in clouds, shapes in shadows, significance in numbers that may mean nothing at all. Left unchecked, this instinct can lead us to invent meanings where there are none, to read every random event as a prophecy, every accident as destiny. And in doing so, we drift into illusion. Jung was careful. He did not say that all coincidences carry hidden meaning. He said that some coincidences are so improbable, so personally charged, so saturated with symbolic power, that they demand our attention. The scarab at the window was not just any beetle. It arrived in the middle of a breakthrough session, mirroring a dream that carried deep significance. It was not ordinary, it was archetypal. This is the difference. A true synchronicity shakes you. It pierces the armor of logic and leaves you stunned, unable to dismiss it. It feels like reality itself has turned to look you in the eye. By contrast, ordinary coincidences pass quickly. They may be curious, but they do not burn with meaning. The challenge is discernment. How do you tell the difference between noise and signal, between random pattern and genuine synchronicity? The answer, Jung suggested, lies in the depth of resonance. Does the event connect directly with your inner state? Does it arrive at a moment of crisis, transition, or awakening? Does it open a door, break a barrier, or carry a symbol so precise that ignoring it would feel like betrayal? This is why listening to life requires more than sensitivity. It requires humility, to recognize that not every pattern is a message, that not every strange dream is prophecy, that sometimes a number is just a number, a coincidence is just coincidence. But when a true synchronicity comes, you will know. You will feel it in your body, the shiver down your spine, the pause in your breath, the sudden certainty that something greater has just brushed against your life. It will not be born from desire, nor from imagination, but from alignment. And in that moment, the distinction between chance and meaning will no longer matter, because the experience itself will transform you. The danger is real. Fall into magical thinking, and you lose your grounding. But dismiss every sign, and you lose your soul. The path Jung invites us to walk is the middle way, skeptical but open, critical but sensitive, aware that life is always whispering, but wise enough to know that not every whisper is meant for you. And when the real call comes, you will know. And so we return to the question we began with. Are these moments, these strange, impossible coincidences, just accidents of chance? Or are they something more? Carl Jung believed they were more. He believed that synchronicity is one of the most mysterious and beautiful ways in which life reveals its deeper order, not through logic, but through meaning, not through loud commands, but through whispers, through dreams, through symbols, through coincidences so precise that to ignore them would be to ignore the voice of the soul itself. Think again about your own life. When was the last time reality seemed to look you in the eye? The last time a word, a song, a number, or an encounter struck you with a force that logic could not explain? Did you dismiss it? Or did you pause, even for a moment, and wonder if life itself was speaking? Because here is the truth. Synchronicities happen whether you believe in them or not. They do not require your faith. They require your attention. They arrive unannounced, often at the crossroads of crisis and change. They appear like lanterns on a dark road, showing you just enough light to take the next step. But you must choose whether to walk. Most people do not. They rationalize. They say, it's nothing. It's coincidence. And so they go on living, half blind, deaf to the dialogue that could guide them. They keep walking, but without meaning, without alignment, without the quiet assurance that life itself is participating in their journey. But there are others, those who dare to listen, those who trust the shiver down the spine, the sudden impulse, the symbol that refuses to go away. They begin to live differently. They stop fighting against the current and begin to move with it. And when they do, their lives take on a rhythm that feels almost miraculous. Not because they are lucky, but because they are aligned. And perhaps this is the final secret. The more you answer, the more life calls. The more you listen, the more synchronicities appear, as if reality itself leans closer, saying, "Ah, you are awake now. Let me show you more." So ask yourself, right now, in this very moment, is your presence here a coincidence? Or is it a call? Did you simply stumble upon these words by accident? Or were you drawn here because something inside you is ready to awaken? Only you can answer that. But perhaps the fact that you are listening is already your first step. Life is calling you. It calls through coincidences, through encounters, through symbols and dreams. And you have two choices: to dismiss it as chance, or to recognize it as the quiet voice of meaning, guiding you toward your true path. The question is not whether life is calling. It always is. The question is, will you answer?